At a busy train station, a young man stands reading a letter that has clearly ruined the start of his day. His name is Liam Theodore Battenberg, and apparently his grandmother's heart has not merely been worried by his silence, but has burned black and turned to ash entirely. She is making it very clear that his upcoming summer leave comes with expectations attached, specifically a marriage proposal from the royal family that is not going anywhere no matter how many of her letters he fails to answer. Liam looks up from the page, says, "Ah, damn it," and there is a smile on his face that says he is more amused than genuinely concerned. His grandmother has not given up. She never does. His colleague River Ross appears behind him and asks if the letter is about marriage prospects. Liam confirms it is practically an annual tradition at this point, that every leave comes with at least an engagement push or a nagging campaign telling him to start dating someone. River points out that love letters arrive for him at the Naval Department every single day, so clearly the options exist, and Liam asks him if it does not all feel dreadful and meaningless. River stares at him and says what? Liam clarifies that he means love, and then he starts walking and tells River to drop the pointless chit-chat and share what his summer plans actually are. River catches up and explains he is heading to Gloucester Castle where his uncle works as a gardener for the Somerset family. They need extra hands, and he figured doing something useful beats lazing around, and the air out there is fresh with a river nearby for swimming. As Liam listens, a memory surfaces. A colleague in the infirmary once telling him he seemed to lack any lust for life and wishing he would stop calculating everything with his head and just follow his heart instead. Because something very wonderful was bound to happen if he did. Back in the present, Liam asks River to confirm his relative is in the south. River says what? Confused by the shift. Liam tells him he has changed his mind and wants to join him on that wholesome summer vacation of his, and River does not quite know what to do with that answer. Meanwhile, at the Somerset mansion, two men are laughing together, entirely comfortable, entirely unbothered. One of them is a man named Baron Howard, and he is telling Count Somerset that his niece is well-mannered and lovely-faced, and that he raised her quite admirably. A young woman named Vanessa Siren Somerset stands nearby with her head bowed while they discuss her like a transaction being reviewed at a market stall. Count Somerset asks if they should proceed as planned, and Baron Howard says that before the wedding he would like her chastity proven. When the Count calls that an insult, the Baron waves it off, saying a blemished product does not present itself in a second marriage, and as long as her purity is confirmed, the Count may demand whatever he likes because he knows someone with an uncanny ability to assess such things. The casual cruelty of it is staggering. Vanessa's mind pulls her back to the day everything changed. A man named Mr. Watts informed her that since the title had passed to her uncle, she had no right to claim anything regarding the estate or the family, and from that point forward, everything she ate and wore and used would be decided for her, including her marriage when she came of age. Back in the present, she is crouched under a tree vomiting. When she straightens up, she thinks that being called a product actually feels rather fitting given everything she has been through. She notices a spoiled apple on the ground, and the words "blemished product" come back to her with fresh weight. Then she catches the smell of cigarette smoke and wonders what anyone could possibly be doing in the garden at this hour. She walks around the tree and finds a man sitting underneath it, smoking like he has not got a single care in the world, and his name is Liam Theodore Battenberg, though she does not know that yet. Vanessa rounds the tree, expecting to find an ordinary gardener, only to discover a stranger sitting beneath the branches with a cigarette between his fingers and not a single concern on his face. She has never seen him before. The moment he glances up and their eyes meet, her confidence vanishes. "Excuse me," she begins nervously, but before she can say anything else, her maid Mary comes rushing over, breathless from searching the estate. Vanessa turns to ask whether Mary knows who the man is, but when she looks back, he is already gone. The only trace of his existence is the cigarette left smoldering on the ground. For some reason, the encounter refuses to leave her mind. Days pass, yet she keeps finding herself looking toward the gardens, wondering if she will see the mysterious gardener again. A week later, her interest has become impossible to miss. High in a fruit tree, River Ross notices it immediately while working alongside the man currently posing as his cousin, Liam Theodore Battenberg. River points out that Lady Vanessa has been following him around the estate for days and clearly wants to speak with him. Liam, however, looks completely unimpressed. "Must I?" he asks. He already knows how these situations usually go. Either she fell in love at first sight or she wants to know his name. Both possibilities sound equally exhausting. River argues that it would be kinder to tell her the truth. After all, Liam is not really a gardener, and Vanessa once played with him as a child even if she no longer recognizes him. Surely that connection is worth mentioning. Liam only laughs. When River changes topics and suggests moving out of the cramped storage shed he has been sleeping in, Liam jumps down from the tree and reminds him that he is currently supposed to be River Ross, the gardener's hardworking nephew. If he suddenly starts living in luxury, the disguise falls apart. If the disguise falls apart, his grandmother hears about it. If his grandmother hears about it, he ends up trapped in a ceremonial hall surrounded by nobles and marriage contracts. Liam asks whether River truly wants such a tragic ending for him, and River immediately retreats from the conversation. You know what? I can't even argue with that logic anymore. After River leaves, carrying a basket of fruit, Liam remains beneath the tree and gazes across the estate. The place fascinates him in a strange way. Everything feels slightly outdated. The artwork hanging in the halls is unimpressive. The carpets are cheap. Even the family crest is made from copper instead of gold. By every standard, he should find the estate dull and forgettable, yet something keeps drawing his attention back to it. Something about the place feels lonely. Before he can decide exactly what that feeling is, a fruit suddenly drops from above. Liam turns and discovers Vanessa standing nearby with the fallen fruit in her hands. Apparently, she has appeared so quietly that he never even heard her approach. For a moment, she simply stands there, gathering courage. Then she asks whether he would spare a few minutes to speak with her. Liam immediately claims to be busy, despite doing absolutely nothing at the moment. Vanessa ignores the excuse and says she has an offer for him. That finally earns his attention. An offer? He asks. She steps forward, holds out the fruit, and calmly announces that she would like to buy him. Liam stares at her. The world seems to pause. Of all the things he expected to hear today, that sentence was nowhere on the list. I'm sorry. You would like to do what? He thinks as Vanessa waits for an answer, completely serious. And just like that, Liam realizes this conversation is about to become far more interesting than he expected. A week before Vanessa marches into a garden and tries to purchase a man, she is sitting with the only two people she trusts enough to discuss her situation. The atmosphere is half strategy meeting and half desperate comedy. Rosaline Fabian Winchester is already suggesting increasingly ridiculous escape plans, including borrowing her grandmother's old dress as part of some disguise scheme. Her brother, Blair Fabian Winchester, looks up from his book and asks why she still owns such a thing. Rosaline reacts as though he has committed a crime simply by asking. Vanessa cannot help smiling at their argument. She admits that she misses when the three of them could joke around without worrying about marriage contracts and family politics. Then, she suddenly asks Blair whether he would be willing to publicly claim they are in a relationship. The question is shocking enough to make him immediately close his book. Since Blair is already engaged, a scandal involving the heir of the Winchester Marquisate would cause enormous problems for any marriage arrangement. Vanessa's uncle is trying to force upon her. Rosaline quickly agrees that a scandal would be useful, but clarifies she is absolutely not recommending fake romance with her brother. She launches into a passionate rant about how society claims to be modern while still treating a woman's purity like a piece of property. Blair promises they will support whatever Vanessa chooses, whether she wants to run away, disappear for a while, or fight the arrangement directly. Vanessa thanks them, but she refuses to drag her friends into her problems. As she walks toward the window, searching for an answer of her own, her eyes land on a man balancing on a ladder while cutting fruit from a nearby tree. Rosaline notices her staring and remarks that Vanessa becomes strangely fearless whenever she has an idea. Blair tells her to leave it alone. Experience has taught him that once Vanessa reaches this stage, nobody is stopping whatever comes next. Not long afterward, Vanessa is standing beneath a shed with her maid Mary, both of them secretly watching the man from a distance. Mary explains that he is River Ross's nephew, a petty officer in the Navy who fought in the Battle of Potsdam and recently received leave as a reward. Apparently, he decided to spend his vacation helping with the garden work, and according to Mary, nearly every maid in the estate has been losing their minds since he arrived. Vanessa listens carefully. Something about the name River Ross stirs an old memory buried deep in her childhood. Suddenly, she can almost see a younger version of herself racing through a garden while a small boy runs after her, shouting for her to wait. The memory fades as quickly as it appears, leaving her staring at the man beneath the tree. Then, a dangerous thought begins to form. If someone wants to prevent an item from being sold, the easiest solution is to damage it badly enough that nobody wants it anymore. The logic is ridiculous. It is reckless. It is completely unreasonable. Unfortunately, it also makes perfect sense to a young woman who has just been called a product by the people deciding her future. The man standing over there is someone she already knows, someone attractive enough to create a convincing scandal, and someone who arrived at exactly the right moment. Vanessa turns toward Mary and calmly tells her to head back inside because she has something important to discuss with Mr. Ross. That decision eventually brings her to the garden. Liam is standing beneath the tree with a piece of fruit in front of him when Vanessa walks up and casually informs him that she would like to buy him. The statement is so absurd that even Liam, who rarely reacts to anything, cannot immediately process it. After a brief silence, he asks what exactly she means by that. Vanessa replies that she means precisely what she said. She wants him to act as her lover for the duration of the summer, and she is prepared to pay him generously for the inconvenience. Liam studies her for a moment before telling her to skip the polite wording and explain the real reason. The playful confidence leaves her face. Taking a slow breath, Vanessa admits that she needs a scandal powerful enough to destroy her marriage prospects completely. She needs something that will remove her from consideration forever. Society values her because she is considered desirable. Therefore, the fastest way to escape is to become undesirable. The logic is brutal, but she has spent years living under brutal rules. Vanessa continues speaking, forcing herself to say the words she never imagined she would say aloud. It would be even better if she became pregnant. She promises compensation, protection, and enough money to ensure he never suffers consequences for helping her. Once summer ends, they can part ways and pretend none of it ever happened. Liam listens without interrupting. The garden falls silent around them. Finally, he reaches out, takes the fruit from her hand, and lifts it toward his mouth. For several seconds, he simply looks at her. Not with shock, not with judgment, just curiosity. Then he quietly asks a question Vanessa never prepared for. What happens if summer ends and you're still not tired of me? The words hit far harder than any rejection could have, because for the first time since this plan began, Vanessa realizes she never considered what would happen if feelings became real. And judging by the faint amusement in Liam's eyes, he already knows it. Liam's question hangs between them, and Vanessa immediately turns red before insisting that such a thing would never happen. To regain some control over the conversation, she straightens her posture and informs him that he should address her properly as my lady. Liam looks at her for a moment before asking why he would bother. If she wants respect, she should have made a better offer. Right now, she is trying to sell herself cheap while paying him for the privilege. The remark lands hard. Vanessa fires back that money is the only thing she has left to offer. For the first time, Liam goes quiet. His mind drifts back to conversations he overheard while working in the orchard. Maids whispering about a baron more than 70 years old coming to inspect her. Others complaining that noblemen had been arriving one after another ever since her graduation. Someone mentioning that her uncle's business ventures had failed. At the time, it was idle gossip. Now it suddenly feels different. Now the woman standing in front of him is desperately trying to buy her way out of exactly that future. Vanessa quickly explains that she has a pension waiting for her and that if she has a child, she can apply to receive it. She promises yearly payments for 5 years and insists that if he wants more, she will find a way to earn it. Unfortunately for her, Liam calmly tells her that money means very little to him. For a moment, she studies his face. Then she reveals her trump card. She knows Mr. Ross has been embezzling maintenance funds for years. The garden accounts do not add up, and she has already gathered evidence proving it. Liam listens without reacting. Inside his head, however, he finds himself unexpectedly entertained. High society has thrown every kind of proposal at him before. Some offer wealth, some offer affection, some want comfort, some want status. Vanessa's version simply happens to be, I would like to purchase you. Ridiculous as it sounds, it is still more interesting than most. He asks what an old gardener's crimes have to do with him. Vanessa looks confused and reminds him that Mr. Ross is supposedly his uncle. Liam immediately realizes where the misunderstanding comes from. Instead of correcting her, he pulls out a cigarette and lights it. Then he casually tells her that if all she wants is to spend the summer with him, she should stop making pathetic threats and simply confess her love. Even Liam knows he is deliberately giving her the wrong answer. Vanessa covers her nose against the smoke and flatly states that she does not love him. Saying otherwise would be a lie. Something about the answer irritates him more than it should. Fine, he says. Then the deal is off. Panic flashes across her face. She immediately asks whether all she needs to do is claim she loves him. Liam laughs softly and drops the cigarette into the grass. The problem is not the words themselves. The problem is that he would never know whether she was threatening him or confessing to him. And if he feels nothing for her, then none of it matters anyway. Vanessa opens her mouth to ask what exactly that means. Before she can finish, Liam steps forward and kisses her. The question dies instantly. Vanessa freezes where she stands, too shocked to move. For a brief moment, the entire garden seems to stop with her. When they finally separate, she can only stare at him in disbelief while Liam studies her reaction with equal surprise. He had intended to throw her off balance and end the discussion. Instead, he finds himself more curious than before. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Blair Fabian Winchester happens to glance out a window and catches sight of the pair in the garden. He immediately asks the butler who the man beside Vanessa is. The butler explains that he is supposedly the gardener's nephew, a naval officer on leave helping with the estate work. Blair continues watching through the glass. Something about that face feels familiar. Very familiar. He quietly instructs the butler to gather information on the man, and as he picks up his book once more, his eyes never leave the garden. Whatever puzzle is forming in his mind, he is already beginning to put the pieces together. Inside the mansion, Blair Fabian Winchester remains standing by the window, unable to shake the feeling that he has seen the gardener's nephew somewhere before. The thought keeps nagging at him until Rosaline walks into the room and immediately asks who looks familiar. The butler bows politely as she enters, but Rosaline ignores all formalities and drops into a chair while staring out toward the gardens. She complains that preparations for the upcoming grand tour are painfully dull and admits that she wishes Vanessa could join them. After all, Vanessa generously let her stay at the castle before the trip, and every attempt to repay the favor has been firmly rejected. Blair reminds her that Count Somerset is rushing the marriage negotiations, so travel is out of the question. Rosaline looks horrified. Vanessa only graduated days ago, and already people are discussing her future husband as if her life belongs on a schedule. Blair watches the garden below and quietly remarks that perhaps marriage itself might eventually become Vanessa's path to freedom. These days, it is hardly unusual for nobles to maintain lovers outside marriage. Rosaline immediately tells him to stop talking nonsense. She values Vanessa too much to joke about her situation, and he should spend less time imagining scandals and more time remembering that his own engagement was entirely his choice. Blair falls silent. More than anyone, he understands exactly what she means. His gaze drifts back toward Vanessa, walking alone among the gardens. And for some reason, the sight leaves him uneasy. Several days later, Liam and River Ross are standing near the garden shed when another noble carriage arrives at the estate. River recognizes the visitor immediately and remarks that today's candidate appears to be Count Rowden. Apparently, the arrangement with Baron Howard has collapsed. Before Liam can respond, Mary arrives carrying drinks and casually states that Baron Howard was actually the better option. That sentence alone is enough to make both men stare at her. River asks how anyone could possibly reach that conclusion. Mary hands them their cups and explains that Count Rowden's reputation is genuinely terrifying. He has been married multiple times, yet nobody seems entirely certain where his previous wives ended up. Rumors follow him everywhere. Some claim he sleeps with every maid in his household. Others insist he recently fathered a child with a war widow. A River nearly chokes on his drink. He cannot understand why any family would willingly arrange such a marriage. Mary lowers her voice and explains the ugly reality. Count Somerset's investments have failed one after another. The estate is struggling. The family's reputation is fading. At this point, the only valuable asset left is Vanessa herself. She glances toward the mansion and quietly adds that when the previous Count and Countess were alive, nobody could have imagined things would ever become this desperate. Across the garden, Vanessa is already enduring the meeting. Count Rowden lounges comfortably beside Count Somerset while discussing her future as if she is not sitting right there. He laughs about how unbelievable it is that such a beautiful young woman was almost married off to a man over 70 years old. Count Somerset responds by saying they nearly missed out on an excellent match. Rowden finds this hilarious. At one point, he casually pats Vanessa on the lap like someone inspecting furniture before purchase, and neither man seems to notice how uncomfortable she becomes. The conversation eventually shifts toward rumors about her friendship with the Winchester heir. Count Somerset immediately dismisses any concerns, assuring Rowden that Vanessa has merely known the Winchester twins since childhood and that he has personally managed every aspect of her private life. Satisfied, Rowden remarks that Autumn should provide plenty of time to prepare the wedding. Both men laugh and return to discussing business. Vanessa slowly raises her eyes. Across the estate grounds, beyond the flowers and hedges, she spots Liam standing near the garden shed. He is looking directly at her. His expression reveals absolutely nothing, yet somehow that makes it worse. For the first time all afternoon, she feels as though someone actually noticed what just happened. That evening, Liam is walking through the gardens when he hears footsteps approaching from behind. Vanessa catches up and immediately announces that they need to talk. Without even slowing down, Liam replies that he does not believe they have anything left to discuss. Vanessa refuses to accept that answer. She calls after him, rushes ahead, and plants herself directly in his path. Liam finally stops. For a moment, neither of them speaks. Then Vanessa gathers her courage and blurts out the last thing he expects to hear. "Do it again," Liam blinks. "Do what again?" Vanessa's face turns red, but she forces herself to continue. "Kiss me. This time I'm sure I can do better." Liam simply stares at her. Of all the requests he anticipated today, a demand for a second attempt was nowhere on the list. "I'm sorry, did she just ask for a performance review on a kiss she never even requested in the first place?" The realization hits him a second later, and suddenly the conversation has become far more dangerous than either of them intended. Vanessa insists she can do better this time, but Liam barely gives the statement any attention. He walks straight past her and casually remarks that repeating the kiss is not going to change anything because she does not even attract him in that way. The response hits like a hammer. Panic immediately flashes across her face. She grabs his sleeve before he can leave and blurts out that the wedding date has already been set. By autumn, she will officially be married to Count Rowden. This is no longer a distant possibility. It is happening. Liam turns back and tells her that if she is truly this desperate, she should simply find someone else instead of chasing him around the estate. Vanessa explains that she is barely allowed outside the castle grounds. Even within the estate, she is watched constantly. Liam suggests bringing someone in from outside. She explains that everyone entering the property is approved by her uncle. He suggests running away entirely. That answer finally causes her voice to soften. Her parents are buried nearby, and she is the only one who still visits them. Liam studies her for a moment before asking whether she truly intends to sacrifice her own future for the sake of the dead, allowing herself to become another piece of gossip consumed by high society. Trying a different approach, Vanessa asks whether he genuinely does not remember her. They used to play together as children. Liam pauses. At this point, he knows he should probably reveal that he is not River Ross at all. The problem is that if he tells her the truth, she will simply track down the real River Ross and make the exact same proposal. And knowing River, there is a frightening chance he would agree out of pure sympathy. Before Liam reaches a decision, Vanessa continues explaining herself. She knows the offer sounds insulting. The reason she approached him is because he is an outsider. He is not a noble. He has no title to lose. If a scandal erupts, the damage to his life should be minimal compared to hers. Liam raises an eyebrow and asks whether she would have approached him if he were a nobleman. Vanessa immediately shakes her head. If a wealthy noble became involved, her uncle would simply force a marriage and turn the situation into another transaction. That is exactly what she wants to avoid. Marriage means nothing unless it is with someone you truly love. Besides, once summer ends, all attention will fall on her alone. He will be gone. The scandal will remain behind. Gently taking his hand, she tells him that summer is short. Before long, everything will fade away. Liam stands quietly while considering his options. He could accept her proposal as the common gardener she believes him to be. He could reveal his true identity and intervene as a duke. Or he could walk away entirely and return to enjoying the peaceful vacation he came here for. The answer, forming in his mind, is embarrassingly simple. He is having fun. More importantly, this woman is the most interesting thing that has happened to him in a very long time. Before he can say anything, Vanessa suddenly stiffens and blurts out his name. Her voice is shaking. Liam asks what is wrong. She points frantically at herself and whispers that there is a spider. He tells her to slow down and explain. A second later, she drops to her knees and announces that she is certain the spider crawled inside her dress. Liam circles behind her and takes a look. After a few moments, he finds the supposed culprit and flicks it away. Vanessa immediately twists around and asks whether he got it. Liam tells her that she probably mistook a loose strand of hair for a spider. Vanessa refuses to believe him and insists he check properly because she is absolutely certain something went inside her clothes. Liam asks whether she seriously wants him to look further. To his surprise, she nods without hesitation. For a moment, he honestly cannot tell whether this is some elaborate attempt at flirting or whether she is simply that innocent. Either way, the situation has become dangerously awkward. Trying not to laugh, he leans closer and continues checking, while Vanessa waits nervously for confirmation that the terrifying invader is gone. The distance between them suddenly feels much smaller than before. The warm evening air grows strangely tense, and neither of them seems entirely sure what to do with the silence that follows. What began as another argument somehow ends with both of them standing far closer than either intended, and for the first time all day, neither one knows what to say next. Liam's hand remains on Vanessa's back as she softly calls his name. He tells her he cannot find any spider and asks whether they should stop there, but Vanessa quietly shakes her head. What begins as a search for an imaginary insect slowly turns into something neither of them expected. The distance between them disappears. A moment later, they are sharing another kiss, and the atmosphere becomes far more intimate than either originally planned. Vanessa finds herself struggling to reconcile the man standing before her with the childhood memory she carries. The River Ross she remembers was an energetic boy chasing her through gardens and getting left behind whenever she ran too fast. This man feels completely different, more confident, more difficult to understand, and despite herself, she cannot stop wondering which version is the real one. Eventually, Liam pulls back and studies her expression. He asks whether she is absolutely certain she will not end up crying over him once summer comes to an end. Vanessa remains silent for a moment. Liam suggests making a wager out of it. That finally earns a reaction. She immediately replies that nobody would ever fall for someone like him, which only makes him smile. The answer tells him far more than she intended. Still, he becomes serious enough to explain that he has no desire to complicate his life with responsibilities he is not prepared for. Vanessa asks whether he means that literally or if there is another reason behind the statement. Liam simply tells her she can satisfy that curiosity over time. If she truly intends to keep things simple and temporary, then perhaps they can enjoy the arrangement for what it is. As he gently holds her face, he reminds her that even this carries risks. A noblewoman's reputation is fragile, and once damaged, it rarely recovers completely. Vanessa rises to her feet and decides that if they are going to do this, she wants one condition of her own. She extends her hand and tells him that while this arrangement lasts, they should treat it seriously. She does not want something shallow that disappears after a handful of meetings. If they are pretending to be together, then she wants it to feel real. Liam looks at her outstretched hand and cannot help finding the request strangely amusing. Out of everything she could have demanded, she chose sincerity. After a brief pause, he accepts the handshake. The moment feels unexpectedly formal. Somehow, that simple gesture makes the entire arrangement seem far more significant than the conversation that created it. Then Vanessa turns her face away, clearly embarrassed, and reminds him of the wager. She is completely confident. Even if the heavens themselves fall, she will never be the first one to say she loves him. Liam laughs and says he looks forward to seeing how long that confidence survives, though he should probably mention that he does not believe in gods. Vanessa asks whether they should continue where they left off. As the summer evening settles around them, Liam finds himself reflecting on something she said earlier. Vanessa claimed summer is short. In his experience, southern summers last forever. The heat lingers. The days stretch endlessly, and every year, the season brings flowers into bloom that seemed ordinary only weeks before. Looking at Vanessa's summer set, Liam cannot help thinking they probably should not have made that bet. Because whether either of them realizes it yet or not, summer has only just begun. Back at the garden storage shed, Liam pushes the door open and tells Vanessa to watch her head on the way inside. She steps into the small room and looks around with quiet curiosity. The place is far simpler than anything she is used to, yet somehow it feels more comfortable than many of the grand rooms inside the mansion. Liam tells her to rest if she is tired and heads back outside to fetch water. Left alone, Vanessa sits on the edge of the bed and lets out a long sigh. Everything that happened in the garden keeps replaying in her head, and the more she thinks about it, the less certain she is about what she is doing. Eventually, her attention drifts toward a table covered with personal belongings. When Liam returns carrying a bucket of water, he finds her examining the items with obvious interest. Vanessa points out that several of them look surprisingly expensive. She has seen similar luxury goods in the rooms of noble friends before. Is the Navy salary really that generous? Liam replies that it is not exactly poor. Vanessa immediately tells him he should probably spend less money on unnecessary luxuries. Liam only smiles and says he will manage his finances himself. The conversation gradually settles into something more relaxed. Liam helps her clean up while Vanessa insists she is perfectly capable of handling it alone. He points out that there is no mirror in the shed and asks whether she is really certain she can manage every detail without seeing herself. That earns an embarrassed look. She asks if she truly appears that disheveled. Liam remarks that she looks exactly like someone who spent the evening making questionable decisions in a garden. Vanessa immediately tells him to slow down because things have not progressed nearly as far as he is implying. Liam gives her a puzzled look while she struggles to explain herself. By the time she realizes what he has actually been doing, the conversation has already moved on. Her hair has been neatly braided without her noticing. Vanessa reaches up in surprise and stares at the result. It is beautiful. She asks where he learned to do something like that. Liam simply looks at her, amused by the question, and says he might tell her next time they meet. Meanwhile, back inside the mansion, Mary has spent most of the afternoon searching for Vanessa. The moment she finally appears, the maid immediately demands an explanation. Vanessa apologizes and claims she accidentally fell asleep in the garden while reading. Mary clearly does not believe a word of it. As she helps tidy Vanessa's appearance, she notices the ribbon tied in her hair is stained with grass and dirt. Without thinking much of it, she suggests throwing it away. Vanessa's hand closes around the ribbon almost immediately. After a brief silence, she tells Mary not to discard it. For some reason, she feels as though she might need it again. Mary gives her a suspicious look, but wisely decides not to ask any further questions. That night, the estate settles into silence. Inside the garden shed, Liam sits alone on the edge of his bed. For a while, he stares at a piece of clothing in his hands before tossing it aside and lying back to look at the ceiling. Sleep refuses to come. Across the estate, Vanessa sits in her room, turning the ribbon over between her fingers. She tells herself there is no reason to keep thinking about him, yet her thoughts continue drifting back to the garden, the shed, and the strange agreement they made. Neither of them is sleeping. Neither of them is willing to admit why. And the funniest part is that summer has barely even begun. Rosaline Fabian Winchester sits in Vanessa's room, having completely abandoned the boat trip to Dunstar River that she spent most of the previous year talking about. When Vanessa points out that she should have gone, especially after being so excited for it, Rosaline dramatically squeezes the newspaper in her hands and declares that there is no chance she is leaving while Vanessa is sick. A moment later, her attention drops to one of the headlines. Oh my. The Duke of Battenberg is missing. That immediately gets everyone's attention. Rosaline begins reading aloud and quickly develops her own theory. Since the Duke is apparently still handling affairs through letters and telephone calls, she suspects he has simply vanished to avoid the royal family's marriage plans. In her opinion, whoever managed to capture his attention enough to make him disappear must be extraordinary. Vanessa glances toward the photograph printed beside the article. The image is blurry and unclear, yet something about the face bothers her. It feels strangely familiar. Before she can think too deeply about it, Rosaline notices her staring and immediately accuses her of being interested in the Duke. Vanessa denies it so quickly that the answer sounds suspicious. Right at that moment, Blair Fabian Winchester walks into the room and asks the obvious question. Interested in who? The conversation eventually moves into the sitting room, where the newspaper becomes the center of attention. Rosaline insists that the Duke possesses exactly the sort of face capable of making someone plan an entire future after one glance. Vanessa points out that the photograph is so blurry she can barely tell what he looks like. Blair closes his book long enough to offer a completely different opinion. From everything he has heard, the Duke's private life is a disaster. Women allegedly appear at the Battenberg estate on a regular basis claiming to be carrying his child. Even stranger, no official portrait of him has been released since he was 10 years old. Blair considers that a massive warning sign. Men do not hide themselves to that extent without a reason. Rosaline immediately accuses him of tearing down someone more attractive than himself. Blair asks whether insulting her own twin brother is truly necessary. Vanessa eventually tells both of them to stop arguing. Blair relents but leaves her with one final observation. Men never do anything without a reason. Vanessa casually agrees while Rosaline waves the newspaper around and insists it is perfectly normal to be curious. More importantly, Vanessa needs to recover quickly because there is an upcoming picnic they absolutely cannot miss. Several days later, the missing Duke of Battenberg is sitting inside a garden shed with a telephone pressed against his ear. On the other end of the line, Norman provides the usual reports. The annual charity donation has been delivered successfully. The shipping company is operating smoothly. Edgar will be traveling south soon with several important documents. Liam listens quietly and confirms everything is in order. Norman carefully asks whether there is any chance he plans to return earlier than expected. Liam reminds him that he made his intentions very clear. He is spending his vacation here. Norman immediately agrees, but cannot resist mentioning that the Grand Duchess is handling the situation poorly. She has practically abandoned social activities and spends most of her days pacing between her room and the garden, while complaining about her missing grandson. Liam tells him to reassure his grandmother that he will return when he chooses and that she can reduce the dramatic protests. Naturally, that only encourages Norman to ask the question everyone wants answered. Has he finally met a woman worth marrying? Liam dryly asks whether the latest rumor is still that he has eloped. Norman replies that he would simply appreciate advance notice if wedding preparations suddenly become necessary. The conversation is about to end when Liam glances through the shed window and notices something interesting. Vanessa Somerset, who is supposedly too ill to leave her room, is strolling through the estate grounds looking perfectly healthy. More importantly, she is not alone. Blair is walking beside her, and the two appear deep in conversation. Liam watches them for several seconds. The amusement in his expression slowly fades into something more focused, something sharper. When he speaks again, his tone has changed completely. Before hanging up, he gives Norman a new assignment. He wants Vanessa Somerset's debts, her reputation at school, the names of her friends, her history with men, every detail, nothing omitted. Norman is clearly surprised by the request, but Liam does not explain himself. He simply continues watching through the window as Vanessa disappears down the garden path beside Blair. Up until now, this has been an entertaining summer distraction. For the first time, however, Liam realizes he wants to know exactly who Vanessa Somerset is, and once Liam becomes curious about something, he rarely stops until he has his answer. Inside the cozy greenery coffee shop, Vanessa sits across from Rosaline and Blair with a contract resting in her hands. The moment Rosaline sees the papers, she practically bounces out of her seat and demands to know whether Vanessa is signing for another novel. When Vanessa confirms it, Rosaline lights up immediately. This contract even includes a secret promotional campaign. If everything goes well, Vanessa could become famous far sooner than expected. Vanessa laughs softly and admits that none of it would have happened without their help. If she had tried pursuing this path alone, her uncle never would have approved it. The sincerity in her voice nearly brings Rosaline to tears. Blair quietly looks away while Rosaline dramatically declares herself overwhelmed with emotion. Trying to lighten the mood, Vanessa offers to treat them both to dinner that evening. Rosaline looks moments away from crying for real. Unfortunately, Blair chooses that exact moment to say something that changes the atmosphere completely. He points out that Vanessa does not need to exhaust herself trying to save every coin. Once she is married, her husband's assets will become hers as well. She will receive an allowance. Financial security will no longer be a concern. Rosaline immediately turns on him. She reminds him that he promised to help stop the marriage by any means necessary and demands to know whether he has changed his mind. Blair calmly insists that he is only being realistic. As someone close to both Vanessa and her family, he feels obligated to acknowledge reality instead of pretending it does not exist. Rosaline argues that he is treating the marriage as though it is already inevitable. Maybe Vanessa simply wants to experience ordinary working life for herself. Maybe she deserves encouragement instead of another lecture about marriage. The argument gradually fades, but the tension remains. Everyone at the table understands what is really happening. Vanessa is not writing novels because she wants a hobby. She is desperately searching for a way to support herself without becoming someone else's bargaining chip. Blair knows that better than anyone, which is exactly why his words sting. Eventually, Vanessa folds her hands together and explains the truth. Her uncle does not care about her happiness. He cares about the money her marriage will bring him. If she wants freedom, she has to solve the problem at its source. Blair studies her carefully before asking whether she truly intends to avoid marriage forever. Life is difficult for women without powerful support. Her uncle will not simply give up. Then, more quietly, he asks whether there might already be someone in her heart. Vanessa immediately denies it. The issue is not another man. The issue is that this is not the future her parents would have wanted for her, and it is not the future she wants either. Rosaline falls silent. Blair does the same. After a long pause, Blair carefully suggests that perhaps she should not dismiss marriage completely. Whether she marries or simply chooses a partner outside of marriage, perhaps she should consider building a family before walking away. Once she experiences that kind of happiness, she might discover that marriage itself is not the enemy. There could be another path forward that she has not considered yet. Nobody knows how to respond after that. The conversation slows to a crawl. For the first time all afternoon, the three friends feel separated by something larger than disagreement. They all care about one another, yet none of them can quite reach the others. By the time they leave the cafe, Vanessa is carrying a disappointment she never expected to feel. She knew convincing people would be difficult. What hurts is realizing that even the people closest to her do not fully understand why she is fighting so hard. As she walks back through the gardens later that day, the conversation continues replaying in her mind. Part of her had hoped Blair and Rosaline would immediately understand because they have shared so much together over the years. Instead, she feels more alone than she did before entering the cafe. Then she spots someone ahead. Liam is standing beneath the evening sun with a dog sitting beside him. The animal looks alert while Liam appears perfectly relaxed. He glances over, notices her approaching, and their eyes meet. Vanessa walks toward him and greets him with a casual long time no see River. Liam gives the dog a command to stay where it is before looking back at her. Right, long time no see, Vanessa. The exchange is completely ordinary. No discussions about marriage. No negotiations. No lectures about her future. Just a simple greeting. And after everything that happened today, that small bit of normalcy feels far more comforting than she expected. For the first time since leaving Greenery, Vanessa finds herself smiling without forcing it, and Liam notices immediately. Neither of them says anything about it. They simply continue walking together through the fading summer light. Back in the garden storage shed, Liam pours tea for Vanessa and tells her he thought she got scared and ran off. She asks if he was actually waiting for her. He looks at her quietly and says he heard she was sick, and Vanessa goes still for a moment before telling him she used the time to think about what she needs to do from here, specifically the plan to ruin her reputation now that having a child is off the table. Liam sits on the edge of the bed and points out that even in the conservative South, a rumor about a woman alone with a man in the garden at night would be enough to cause serious damage. Vanessa says that kind of thing does not get printed in the newspaper. Liam repeats the words printed in the newspaper like he is turning them over in his head, and Vanessa goes quiet before laying out her options one by one, calling in journalists, pretending to have a breakdown, bringing in a doctor, acting mentally unstable. Liam tells her it is better not to start a performance she cannot sustain to the end. She asks if she should pretend to be a woman who throws herself at any man. He looks at her and says she is currently doing that. Vanessa says ah, and takes a long sip of her tea. Liam stands up and tells her an uncertain plan will only ruin her life. Vanessa says anyway she really just came today to see his face and let him know she is feeling better. As she reaches into her purse, he flicks her hair and tells her she sounds like a merchant trying to prove her reliability to a client. She tells him if he is busy, he should go tend to his work because she also has something to finish today. While he keeps flicking her hair, she pulls out her manuscript and starts writing, and he looks at it and asks if that is a novel. She says yes because besides the allowance she needs to save money and the novel could come in useful. The memory of what Blair and Rosaline said surfaces as she writes, that there is no need to go to such lengths since the allowance will come once she is married, and it is not like she is doing this to make a living. She sits with that for a moment before looking at Liam and asking if he also thinks that kind of work is unnecessary for noble women. He looks at her face and says absolutely not, that this is better than doing nothing at all. She asks if he believes in the value of honest work. He says he believes in the value of money. She says, ah, okay, and something about the plainness of that answer makes her smile to herself. Liam moves back and watches her for a moment before saying her name and bringing his face close and kissing her. Then he pulls out the bed and Vanessa says, wait, River, first. He asks if he should stop. Her heart is pounding like she has just run a long distance from nothing more than physical contact, and a rush of something close to fear moves through her. She thinks about what he asked before, whether she was sure she would not come raging to him in tears when summer ended. She looks at his face and decides that at this point there is no backing out. Liam comes close again and they kiss, and the shed is very quiet around them while summer outside is still very much in full heat. Back on the bed, Liam holds Vanessa, and something in him is genuinely unsettled by what he cannot explain. Every other person who has ever pursued him came with obvious desire and predictable motives, and none of it ever moved him. She is different, and not in any way he can point to clearly, which is the part that bothers him most. He thinks that maybe from the very moment he saw her sitting under that tree, he should have recognized what was coming. What surprises him is that he finds he welcomes it entirely. A carriage ride later, he is sitting across from his cousin, a man named Edgar Powell Marlborough, who looks around at the countryside with visible distaste and asks if Liam is truly comfortable staying somewhere this shabby and small and dirty. Liam says it is all right. Edgar cannot understand why someone would reject a marriage proposal from the princess only to disappear into a backwater like this, and the only explanation that would make any sense to him is a hidden child somewhere, which would at least justify the grandmother's ongoing fit. Liam tells him flatly that a marriage to the princess would only reduce him to a glorified son-in-law in the royal family, and when Edgar keeps pushing, Liam tells him to go back if he is just going to spout nonsense. Edgar goes quiet and studies him for a moment before saying the air about him is different from the last time they met, and he cannot quite work out what changed. Then, something outside the carriage window catches Liam's eye, and his expression shifts before he can catch it, and he shakes his head and presses his hand to it like he is resetting himself. Edgar notices immediately and asks if he wants to meet her. Liam says what? Edgar tells him the woman with the umbrella is Haley Morton of the Morton Marquisate, that the connection would benefit his business, and that with looks like that his grandmother would be very satisfied with a match. Liam looks at Edgar's barely concealed smile and thinks he should at least try to hide his expression while making these suggestions. Then Liam says her neck is pretty. It lands so flatly that the carriage driver announcing their arrival is the only thing that saves the moment from complete silence. Edgar stares at him and says, "What the?" before telling Liam she would probably be happy to hear that, and then he steps out. Liam watches through the window as Edgar walks over and takes the umbrella from Haley. When her face turns slightly toward the carriage, he looks at her and thinks they do not look alike at all. The thought pulls him straight back to last night, to Vanessa and the smallness of the storage shed and the way he was completely absorbed in her like a man who had lost all reasonable judgment. He sighs at himself quietly. Then Haley's eyes drift toward the carriage and find him looking, and for a moment neither of them moves, and Liam sits there thinking about someone else entirely. Vanessa sits at her desk with her novel open in front of her, but she is not writing. She is back in the garden storage shed in her head, and the memory pulling her there is a quiet one. Liam sitting on the edge of the bed, telling her to wake up and eat something because she must be exhausted after all that screaming, and she told him to stop teasing her but ate every bite anyway. Then, when she was packing her bag before sunrise, he asked if she was going, and she told him Mary would come looking when the sun came up and that she would be back the following night. He told her not tomorrow. She looked at him surprised, and he said he would be away for a few days, and before she could say anything, he pulled her into a hug, and she stood there completely flustered, asking what he was doing. And he told her if she waited patiently, he would bring her back a gift. Back in the present, she puts her head down on the table and tells herself out loud that they were very much like lovers, and it has already been a full week since she last saw him. Then she tells herself to get a grip. Mary walks in and asks what she is doing. Vanessa straightens up and says nothing, but Mary's expression makes it clear she has something to tell her. Whatever Mary was about to say does not matter for long because Vanessa finds herself sitting in the main parlor across from Count Rowden, who comments pleasantly that it has been a while and that his fiancée looks rather unhappy to see him. Vanessa tells him she was simply caught off guard since she received no notice of his visit and her uncle is away. He tells her he already knew that and does not mind since she is the only one he came to see anyway. He says he had planned to take things slowly, but it seems there is no time for that given his schedule. And before Vanessa can ask what he means, the door opens and Count Somerset walks in with an elderly woman introduced as Madame Luther, a well-known expert in her field. Vanessa repeats the words "this field" like a question. Count Rowden looks at her with mild surprise and asks if Somerset did not tell her, since he assumed she had already been informed. Vanessa says her uncle never mentioned anything. Count Rowden explains smoothly that for people of their standing, this is standard procedure before marriage, a matter of marital fidelity and the heir yet to be born. And he adds that if something you paid a high price for turns out to be defective, anyone would be disappointed, would they not? Vanessa looks at him for a long moment and asks quietly if he is saying he wants proof of her chastity. He tells her he is glad they understand each other, and admits he was a bit concerned given her boarding school background, since so many young women today are so free, are they not? Vanessa stands up and tells him that if he doubts her, he should simply break the engagement and that she will be reporting everything that happened today to her uncle. Before she can take another step, Count Rowden grabs her hand and she demands to know what he is doing, and then Count Rowden looks at her and tells her to shut up, sit down, and spread her legs. The room goes completely still. Vanessa stares at him like she is seeing him clearly for the very first time, and what she sees is not going to be easy to unsee. Count Rowden sits close to Vanessa and tells her not to cry, calling her childish and asking what he can do to ease her heart, and it takes everything she has not to say exactly what she is thinking. Madame Luther steps forward and explains her method with the calm authority of someone who has done this many times, saying that a single drop of divine water on the skin will reveal everything, that if the young lady is chaste, the water will rest calmly, and if her body has become impure, it will simply run away. Count Rowden listens and says approvingly that he now understands why so many noble ladies recommended her, and Madame Luther asks if they may proceed calmly before turning to the Count and asking him to step outside for a moment. Once he is gone, Madame Luther sits close to Vanessa and tells her to bring her arm over. Vanessa looks at her and says quietly that she finds the method a little suspect because she does not see how water alone could prove anything about a person's purity. Madame Luther tells her it is a matter of conscience, that if she has nothing to hide, she would not be shaking, and she asks if there is something in her heart that makes her tremble. Vanessa goes still and thinks it through, and then she tells the old woman that the fact that Count Rowden stepped aside without complaint means he trusts her word completely, which means whether the water spills or not, she could say whatever she wants in the end. Madame Luther says yes. Vanessa cuts her off and says she would like to buy the verdict. Outside the mansion, rain falls steadily, and Vanessa stands on the staircase, letting it come down on her, thinking that if this had happened before she lost her virginity, she probably would have welcomed it. Because this could have been exactly the scandal she always wanted, the very thing she had been hoping for, and yet now the thing she once wished for is what she is desperately trying to hide. Then an umbrella appears over her head and Liam is standing beside her asking what is wrong, and Vanessa looks at him with tears mixing with the rain on her face and thinks that she still does not want this summer to end. And she hugs him before she can stop herself. He does not say anything. He just stands there in the rain and lets her. Later in the garden storage shed, they are lying on the bed and Liam tells her he thought she had rested her throat, so why was she holding back so much? Vanessa asks what if they get caught. Liam says was that not what she wanted. She tells him that if they are caught now, it would put him in danger, and she sits up and says that if their relationship is to be discovered, it must be after she has left this place. He tells her that even so, if her body is hurting, she should just let herself make a sound. Vanessa thinks to herself that it feels again like they are genuinely together, like two people in a real relationship rather than a summer arrangement with an expiration date written into it from the start. And underneath that thought is the memory of Madame Luther's parting words, that she would not change her verdict for payment right now, but to contact her again once a child was on the way. And she had one more thing to add, which was that a relationship like this cannot be kept forever, and that nurturing something that is not genuine will only leave the young lady as the one who ends up hurt. Woven into that memory is Liam's voice telling her she needs to take better care of her own body, and her own voice promising she will, and both memories sit together in a way that is becoming harder and harder to untangle with every passing day of summer. Back in the garden storage shed, Liam asks Vanessa if she needs to head back, reminding her that she always leaves early because her maid comes looking. Vanessa does not look up from her book when she tells him there is a circus in Bath today and everyone stepped out to watch it, so she can take her time for once. Liam asks if she wants to go see it. She finally looks up and asks what brought that on, and he tells her she looks like she is dying to go. She says it would be a disaster if she ran into someone she knows because her uncle would never let it slide, and Liam looks at her quietly before reaching over and putting a cap on her head. The answer is simple, he tells her. She just has to make sure she does not get caught. The circus arena is alive with people laughing and moving in every direction, and Vanessa walks beside Liam, tugging at her clothes and saying she feels awkward and like people are giving her strange looks. He points out that for someone who feels that way, she did quite a lot of shopping. She holds up the large bag and explains that a friend's birthday is coming up, and since she rarely gets to go out without her friends, she wanted to buy presents while she had the chance. A brooch for Rosaline and cufflinks for Blair, and she asks if he thinks they will like them. Before Liam can answer, fireworks burst open across the sky, and Vanessa's face tilts up immediately. She says, "Wow," and then says, "It is pretty," and then turns to Liam and tells him the butterfly-shaped one just went off and asks if he saw it. He says, yes, he saw it. She calls him a liar immediately and says he was staring at her face the entire time before telling him to come on because the circus is starting soon, and she walks ahead while he watches her go. Liam thinks that this summer is a fleeting dream that will never come back, that from the very beginning their relationship has been tangled in lies, and even if they were to meet again somewhere in the future, the thought does not get to finish because a voice cuts through the crowd calling out "Captain," and a young Navy man is bowing in front of him, saying it is an honor, and that he heard the captain was spending his leave in the South and could not believe running into him like this. His name is Ensign Campbell from the 4th Battalion, and he tells Liam to speak comfortably. Liam sighs and tells him he is Petty Officer Ross. Campbell says, "Huh?" Liam says it seems he has mistaken him for someone else, and Campbell starts to say something when Vanessa comes walking back, calling out River. Liam looks at her. She looks at him and then at Campbell. The three of them stand there in the middle of the circus crowd, and the summer evening suddenly feels a great deal more complicated than it did 5 minutes ago, because one wrong word from Campbell is all it takes to unravel everything Liam has been carefully building since the moment he climbed down from that fruit tree and decided to stay. Vanessa takes one look at Liam and starts to say his name, but before she can get more than a single word out, panic takes over. Her bag is gone. Whatever conversation they were about to have instantly becomes irrelevant. She explains that it disappeared while she was browsing a stall near the alley, and within minutes, the two of them find themselves sitting inside a police station giving a report. The officer listens carefully before nodding. Apparently, this type of theft has become increasingly common. He begins filling out paperwork and asks for her name. Vanessa immediately freezes. If she gives her real name, the report will eventually reach her uncle. That means questions, restrictions, and another round of suffocating supervision. The silence stretches long enough for the officer to notice something is wrong. Before Vanessa can invent an answer, Liam smoothly steps forward, places a card on the desk, and introduces himself instead. He tells the officer his name is Theo and that he is her companion. Any updates can be sent directly to him. The officer accepts the information and promises to make contact if anything is recovered. Once they leave the station, Vanessa looks at him suspiciously and points out that Theo is awfully close to Theodore. She wants to know exactly when he decided that would be his alias. Liam simply smiles as if the answer is obvious. The moment they step into a quieter street, Liam unexpectedly takes her hand. Before Vanessa can ask what he is doing, he pulls her into a narrow side alley and gently presses her against the wall. Then he kisses her. The suddenness of it steals every thought from her head. For a brief moment, the noise of the city disappears entirely. Liam finds himself holding her closer than he intended, wanting to feel her near enough that even their heartbeats seem connected. The feeling catches him off guard. Vanessa eventually pulls back, flustered and breathless, and immediately tells him not here. More importantly, Theodore needs to wait. The use of that name makes Liam pause. He presses a hand against his forehead and lets out a long sigh before leaning forward and placing a kiss on her forehead instead. Then he asks what sort of scandalous things she imagined he was about to do. The question only makes Vanessa even more embarrassed. A little later, the two of them end up standing on a bridge overlooking the water. The city lights shimmer across the river while evening settles around them. Vanessa remarks that they never even made it into the circus. If she had known tickets would sell out so quickly, they should have arrived much earlier. Liam points out that a little extra money at the entrance would probably have solved the problem. Vanessa immediately objects. That sort of thinking is exactly how people end up bankrupt. She has already seen enough evidence of his questionable spending habits sitting around his room. Those luxury items alone could probably support an entire family. Liam raises an eyebrow while Vanessa confidently explains that ordinary people cannot build fortunes by throwing money around. Even Mary says so. Liam's expression becomes increasingly amused the longer she talks. "Is that so?" he asks. Vanessa firmly insists that it is. Then she leans forward against the railing and gazes out across the river. The fresh air feels wonderful. She admits she is tired of everything waiting for her inside the castle walls. Lately, she keeps finding herself wanting to run away. Anywhere would be fine. Liam turns and rests his back against the railing while watching her. For a moment, an old memory surfaces. A familiar voice saying she could no longer endure a certain place. A promise that once everything was settled, she would return. A promise directed at Theodore. The memory fades as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only the familiar realization that people often say things they never intend to keep. Liam looks at Vanessa and wonders whether she will eventually become another person who disappears the moment circumstances change. Then he speaks. So? Vanessa blinks in confusion and asks what he means. Liam casually asks whether she wants to run away together. Just take each other's hands and leave. The question sounds lighthearted, almost playful. Yet the moment it leaves his mouth, the space between them grows strangely quiet, because despite the joking tone, both of them understand the truth. Neither of them is free. Not really. And perhaps that is exactly why the idea feels so tempting. For several seconds, neither looks away. The river continues flowing beneath the bridge, carrying the evening forward while the impossible question lingers between them. Leaning against the bridge railing, Liam casually asks whether they should simply hold hands and run away together. Vanessa immediately turns the question back on him. Is he the one who wants to run away? Liam points out that she was the one talking about escaping a few minutes ago. Even so, Vanessa shakes her head. Running sounds romantic until people start paying the price for it. If she disappears, her friends will be questioned first. Her maids will struggle to find work because families do not trust servants connected to scandals. Wanted posters with her face will appear across Ingram. Anyone kind enough to help her will end up dragged into the mess as well. The more she thought about it, the more she realized running away was impossible. Fortunately, she has another plan. Liam already dislikes the look on her face. Vanessa explains that she intends to start rumors involving several other men. That way nobody focuses on him. Men love bragging about their connections to attractive women, and if she keeps quiet, they will spread stories all on their own. Eventually, people will assume she has numerous admirers and stop paying attention to any one person. Liam stares at her for several seconds. Then he asks whether her brilliant strategy is really to throw herself at as many men as possible. The words come out sharper than he intended. Vanessa simply nods. Somehow, she manages to be incredibly careful and unbelievably reckless at the exact same time, and the contradiction irritates him far more than it should. The tension fades when Vanessa suddenly smiles and tells him she genuinely enjoyed today. It has been a long time since she felt this relaxed. She thanks him for the memory and admits she will probably remember this day for the rest of her life. Liam immediately calls her a liar. Vanessa blinks in confusion. Liam leans against the railing and tells her that in a few years she will not even remember his face. People always forget. Vanessa argues that she will not. Liam reminds her that she already forgot what River Ross looked like when they were children. Without hesitation, Vanessa insists she remembers perfectly. Curious, Liam asks for details. She confidently replies that he had black hair and blue eyes. For a moment, Liam simply stares at her. The answer is completely wrong. So wrong that he almost starts laughing. At the same time, something about it hurts more than he expects. He presses a hand against his forehead and tells her that is another lie. Vanessa immediately protests. How can it be a lie when she is looking directly into his eyes right now? The question hangs between them. Neither one says another word, because for a brief second, the conversation drifts dangerously close to a truth neither of them is ready to touch. Later that evening, Vanessa returns to the mansion and pushes open her bedroom door. The moment she steps inside, she nearly jumps out of her skin. Blair is already sitting in the darkness waiting for her. Vanessa immediately demands to know what he is doing there, how long he has been sitting in her room, and why Rosaline insisted she stay out all day if this was the plan. Blair calmly explains that she has been ill for days. Her fever refused to break, and Rosaline has been genuinely worried about her. Vanessa quickly claims she feels much better now and starts asking how he even got into her room. Blair cuts her off before she can change the subject. He slowly looks her up and down and asks where exactly she has been. Vanessa replies that it felt stuffy inside the mansion, so she went for a walk. Blair is not convinced. The moment she tries to move past him, he reaches out and catches her arm. Vanessa freezes. Blair quietly points out that she has never been able to look him in the eye when she is lying. She knows that. Vanessa asks what he thinks he is doing. Blair holds her gaze and finally asks the question he has been building toward all evening. Did she get herself a boyfriend while he was not paying attention? More specifically, a Navy man. The room falls silent. Vanessa says nothing. She simply looks at him while her heart pounds louder with every passing second. Blair waits patiently for an answer. The problem is that Vanessa is no longer sure what that answer is supposed to be. Vanessa barely has time to react before Blair reaches up and holds her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. He tells her he saw her meeting with a Navy officer. Vanessa immediately explains that River is simply an old friend from childhood. They happened to meet again after years apart and were happy to catch up. Blair does not look convinced for even a second. Instead, He points toward the faint marks on her neck and quietly asks whether friends usually leave evidence like that behind. Vanessa's face burns with embarrassment. She tells him to stop. Blair presses on anyway, asking whether she realizes she is being manipulated and whether her uncle knows about this mysterious officer. That is the moment Vanessa finally loses patience. She yanks his hand away and tells him to try laying a finger on Liam if he thinks he can. Then she demands to know what right he has to treat her like this. Blair is visibly stunned by the reaction. Vanessa takes a shaky breath and tells him he should stop crossing boundaries, especially for the sake of his fiancée. The reminder changes his expression instantly. After a long silence, Blair quietly reveals something she never knew. His mother already believes Vanessa lost her purity to her uncle. The words hit like a physical blow, and Vanessa goes completely still. Blair continues speaking. When Rosaline heard that accusation, she flew into a rage. The argument became so severe that she was confined for most of the vacation. Suddenly, Vanessa remembers Rosaline giving up the boat trip she had been excited about for an entire year. Blair explains that his mother blamed Vanessa for Rosaline's behavior and even considered writing to the headmistress to demand her expulsion. The situation only ended because Blair agreed to accept his engagement. That was the condition. That was the price. He tells Vanessa that she knows nothing about any of this. Before she can respond, he turns and walks out, leaving her standing alone in the silence. Her eyes eventually drift toward the hat lying on the floor. For the first time that evening, she begins to understand just how many burdens the people around her have been carrying without her knowledge. Later that night, Blair makes his way to the garden storage shed. The moment he steps inside, he surveys the cramped space and remarks that it is almost unbelievable. The Duke of Battenberg, the man the royal family has been desperately searching for, is hiding in a shed that most nobles would not even use for storage. Vanessa, he assumes, still believes Liam is nothing more than an ordinary naval officer. Liam continues trimming a plant with his scissors and casually agrees that the misunderstanding is unfortunate. Blair's patience begins to wear thin. He points out that postponing a royal marriage proposal in such a public fashion has turned the king into a laughingstock, both at home and abroad. Liam listens quietly before asking why Blair seems so concerned about the royal family's dignity. If he cares that much, perhaps he should volunteer himself as the groom instead. Blair's fist tightens. He tells Liam to settle whatever business remains and leave within a few days. The only reason he has remained silent until now is because of Vanessa's reputation. Liam finds that answer amusing. According to Vanessa herself, ruining her reputation appears to be the entire goal. Was that not what Blair wanted as well? Blair immediately denies it, but Liam does not stop there. He calmly mentions the lingering looks, the careful observations, and all the signs Blair probably assumed nobody noticed. In Liam's mind, the situation becomes painfully simple. When Blair believed he was dealing with an ordinary officer, perhaps he imagined a scandal would make Vanessa easier to reach. Perhaps if her social standing collapsed, she would eventually have nowhere else to turn. Liam looks directly at him and remarks that the unfortunate part is that the hand Blair reached out with such innocent intentions happened to land on a Battenberg instead. Blair calls the accusation slander. Liam asks whether they are finished because, unlike certain people, he is extremely busy. The conversation should end there, but instead Blair takes a step forward and asks him to stop before Vanessa gets hurt any further. Then, to Liam's surprise, he drops to one knee. The gesture is sincere, desperate even. Blair admits that Vanessa is more precious to him than anything else. For a moment, the shed falls silent. Then Liam asks a simple question. What exactly can Blair offer her? A future spent hiding his feelings from his mother? A lifetime of compromises and excuses? Blair slowly looks up, shock spreading across his face. Liam asks whether he is wrong, and judging by the silence that follows, neither of them likes the answer. Rosaline is lying on Vanessa's bed, declaring that Blair is completely impossible to figure out because he canceled the grand tour and she cannot believe she came from the same mother as someone like that. And she mentions that she and Blair will be heading back to London soon and staying at a hotel in Bath until then. And Vanessa, who is getting dressed, tells her they are welcome to keep staying at the mansion if a hotel would be uncomfortable. But Rosaline sighs and says if she stayed any longer, her mother would come charging over in a fury to drag her home. And then she apologizes, and Vanessa tells her not to because it is true, and that even so, the woman took good care of her when she was little, and even though they grew distant after her parents passed, she is still someone she is grateful to. The words sit for a moment before Vanessa remembers what Blair told her, that his mother had already decided Vanessa lost her purity to her uncle, that she blamed Rosaline's behavior on Vanessa's influence and even tried to write to the headmistress demanding expulsion. And then Rosaline says that at least she will stay quiet for a while because Blair's wedding has been moved up, and Vanessa asks what she means. And Rosaline explains that since the tour is not happening, he has been dragged straight toward the altar, though apparently he is enjoying staying in the area and has even been looking at homes nearby. And she wonders aloud just how much he plans to inconvenience his future bride by settling somewhere this far out. Then Mary appears and tells Vanessa she is ready, and Rosaline tells her to hurry up and come out, and Vanessa looks at her reflection and asks if it looks strange. And Rosaline stares at her and says, good heavens, she is so beautiful, and that it makes her want to go find that old count right this instant. and Vanessa takes her hand and says her name softly. And Rosaline tells her that the bride's closest friend is supposed to be the first one to see the wedding veil, because it is said to bring a happy marriage. And even though she absolutely hates the man Vanessa is being given to, this is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, and she is so glad she gets to see it with her own eyes. And Vanessa thanks her quietly, and neither of them notices Blair standing in the crack of the doorway looking at both of them. Meanwhile, in the Winchester home, a conversation is happening that carries a very different kind of weight, because Henry Winchester sits with his wife Louise and says he heard Blair intends to spend his honeymoon in the South even after the wedding. And Louise says that is exactly why she told him they never should have let the children spend time in Somerset. And Henry says he does not mind the children being around Vanessa. And Louise says she hates watching them get drawn back to her over and over again. And Henry takes her face in his hands and tells her honestly that every time this happens, they end up this desperate. And then he asks her something that lands quietly but with enormous weight. Whether she believes blood relatives can recognize each other by instinct, and whether their children might one day recognize their real father. The story then pulls back to a moment in the past where Louise is kneeling on the floor and Henry stands over her asking who else knows she is pregnant. And she tells him, no one, only him and that man. And Henry sighs and tells her to think carefully, because if there is a child in her womb, then that child is already his, and their wedding will proceed as planned. And all she needs to do is stay by his side and give birth. And he takes her hand and tells her that is the only punishment he will give her and that man. Back in Vanessa's room, Blair quietly pushes the door open and steps inside. And Rosaline and Vanessa both look up, surprised. Blair's eyes find Vanessa and stay there. And the room holds something unspoken that nobody in it is quite ready to say out loud yet. In his office, Liam sits at his desk with his mind drifting to Vanessa standing over him with a paper and telling him to sign. And he thinks she is completely out of her mind, which is exactly when he notices someone has taken a seat across from him without permission. He tells her he does not recall giving her leave to sit. The woman smiles and asks if she may take a seat before extending her hand and introducing herself as Haley G. Morton, and Liam asks how she knew where to find him, whether it was his cousin or his grandmother. Haley tells him she is afraid she cannot answer that because she does not want to upset him with the truth and does not want to lie for the sake of the trust between them, and Liam tells her that is ridiculous after only meeting once or twice. Haley tells him she heard a rumor down in the South that he has a woman he is seriously seeing, and if that happens to be true, he is going to need her sooner or later, just as she needs him, and the way she says it is calm enough to suggest she has thought this through considerably more than he has. Back in the garden storage shed, Liam and Vanessa are in the bathtub and she is telling him she really does not need help and can wash herself perfectly well. Liam tells her she has been exhausted and it has been a while, and Vanessa's face goes red as she tells him that is because he kept pushing her. Then she says that more importantly, she finished her dress fitting while he was away, and once summer passes, the wedding will really be happening, and it truly is not far off now. The way she says it carries something heavier than the words themselves, like she is reminding herself as much as she is telling him. Meanwhile, Liam is on a call with his grandmother, who tells him that if he says the Morton girl is acceptable, she will drop the royal marriage talks entirely. Liam tells her he knew it, that she was the one who sent Haley, and that regrettably she is not acceptable, and he has no intention of accepting a royal marriage either. His grandmother asks if he ultimately plans to cut off the Battenberg lineage, pointing out that the Mortons are one of Ingram's founding families with an excellent reputation, and that if he would rather die than marry into the royal family, then Morton is his best option and a way to prove his loyalty. Liam says her name and she says Theodore and tells him they witnessed together the consequences of his parents' foolish love, and that she will not fault him for whatever he is doing on vacation, but asks him to meet Haley just 3 times before she respects his decision. It truly breaks her heart, she says, and she has always told him not to forsake the family for something as trivial as love. Liam folds his hands and thinks to himself, what love? Because this is a relationship built on deceits and lies from the very beginning anyway, and he holds on to that thought like it means something. And back in that bathtub, Vanessa is quietly dismantling everything he just told himself, because she is watching the look in his eyes when he does not think she notices. And she thinks that River Ross sometimes looks at her as if this summer will never end, and as if what they have is something that will last beyond it. She does not know what to do with that look. Honestly, neither does he, and the fact that he will not admit it is starting to become the most obvious thing in the room. In the garden storage shed, Liam is writing when Vanessa tells him she will be away from the estate for a week starting tomorrow. He looks up and asks why. She explains she is going on a hunting trip with Count Rowden, hosted by the Essex family, and that she has been turning it down, but they told her she should get some experience before the wedding, since apparently he loves hunting. Liam asks if she has ever been hunting before. She says she does not even know how to hold a gun, and they look at each other quietly for a moment before he stands up, holds out his hand, and tells her to take it. He picks up an umbrella and uses it as a makeshift rifle, telling her to press it tighter against her shoulder. She asks if this is right, and he tells her at that angle she will dislocate her shoulder. He keeps guiding her, telling her a real gun will be heavier than this and that she needs to spread her feet and straighten her back. Vanessa blushes and asks if a little higher is better, and he tells her the servants will handle the loading, so she just needs to focus on holding it properly. She says okay. He tells her to keep her back straight, and she thinks to herself that he really is a naval officer because he explains things so clearly. Then he says her name and she says yes, and he tells her quietly that people use guns instead of fangs or gloves, that it is a fair kind of power because it lets even the frailest person kill someone, and that once you get used to it, you might mistake a person for an animal and pull the trigger. Then he says, bang, and Vanessa startles so hard she drops the umbrella. Standing there in the shed, she thinks that if River Ross has really fallen in love with her, then she needs to push him away even more, and then she kisses him. And the thought continues underneath it, that she cannot leave a stain like herself on the bright future of a soldier, and if this really is love, then she wants to cherish it by not becoming his weakness. It is the most selfless and most heartbreaking conclusion she could have reached, and she reaches it while kissing him. The next morning, Vanessa and Mary are in a car moving through the city streets, and Mary looks at her and says she does not look well at all. Vanessa says she thinks she is just a little carsick. Mary complains about the old-fashioned car and asks why, with so many vehicles to choose from, the master lent them this antique. And Vanessa tells her it is still one of her uncle's favorites, and that he painted it himself and personally imported the engine. Then the driver announces they are approaching Kingston Street and that once they pass through, they will be in Essex territory. Vanessa goes quiet and looks down, and a memory surfaces of something she overheard as a child. A maid telling her uncle that the accident happened in Kingston, that the carriage overturned and both of them. And the sentence never finished, but she has carried the weight of those incomplete words ever since. Back in the present, she tells herself it is fine and that nothing is going to happen. Then the car brakes suddenly and she lurches forward in surprise. Meanwhile, in a carriage on a completely different road, Liam is reading the investigation results he requested on Vanessa Somerset, and what it says is not nothing. Approximately a month before the former Count Somerset died under suspicious circumstances, the inheritance was suddenly redirected to the current Count, and the documents are full of questionable details. And the lawyer who signed as notary has disappeared without a trace. The investigator says there is more to uncover and will follow up. Liam folds the letter and slides it into his jacket, and says quietly to himself that Vanessa should really be pointing that gun at someone else entirely. And the weight of what he means by that settles over the carriage like weather. Back on Kingston Street, Vanessa is slumped unconscious inside the car with blood on her head, and the road is very still around her. Vanessa wakes up to blood on the side of her face and Mary calling her name in a panic. And before Mary can even finish checking on her, Vanessa is already asking if she is hurt, which is exactly the kind of person she is. Worrying about everyone else while bleeding from the forehead. Mary tells her she is fine, but that her forehead needs attention, and Vanessa says she is fine and wants to know what happened. And Mary says some lunatic must have jumped out in front of the car and tells her to wait while she goes to check. Outside the car, the driver stands over a man on the ground, muttering about why he had to jump out here of all places. And Vanessa crouches down and asks if he can move, and the man lifts his head with a shout of pain. And Mary pulls Vanessa back before her clothes get any more blood on them, but Vanessa tells her to get a doctor immediately because the man is clearly hurt. Then the man on the ground starts talking, saying he knows that car and knows the sound of the engine and the color and every single detail. And if they want him to keep his mouth shut, they need to give him more money, because he has done this kind of work before, and as long as they pay, he will do whatever is asked. Vanessa stares at him and asks what exactly he is. And then two police officers come running in, and one of them grabs him off the ground and tells him he is at it again. While the other officer explains to Mary and Vanessa that this is not his first time, that he throws himself in front of unusually colored cars to extort money from drivers. Vanessa says, but he was definitely bleeding a lot, and the officer explains he keeps blood in a small pouch and sprays it on himself, and then tells them to have a safe trip and walks off. Mary says she knew he had to be a con artist before turning to the more pressing problem of Vanessa's ruined dress and what Count Rowden will think when she arrives looking like this. But Vanessa is not thinking about the dress, and she is not thinking about Count Rowden, because she notices something in her hand, a necklace, and Mary asks where it came from. And Vanessa says the man must have dropped it. Then she looks at it, and the world narrows to a single memory of her father holding it up and telling her it is pretty, saying he is going to have a small portrait painted inside, so that wherever he is and whenever he misses her, he can see her face. And the warmth of that memory and the weight of what the necklace means standing here in Kingston Street, of all places, hit her at exactly the same time. She looks at Mary and tells her they need to find a telephone and send word to Essex that something urgent has come up and she will not be making it. And Mary says what? But Vanessa is already walking, telling her she has somewhere she needs to be right now. And when Mary asks where, she says Gloucester, to her uncle, and she keeps walking with the necklace and the portrait of herself and her parents held in her hand like something she is not willing to let go of again. Meanwhile, at Count Essex's residence, Liam sits across from the Count and Edgar while a letter is being reviewed, and the Count says this is not something he can answer alone and asks if he may call his family's investment specialist, and Liam tells him to go ahead. And the Count walks out, leaving Edgar looking at Liam and asking if he is really planning to build a racetrack in the South over a single woman. Liam says he was already weighing the East and the South from the beginning and the returns would be similar, so he is simply prioritizing his own convenience. Edgar asks if he is seriously planning to marry this hidden woman of his. Liam thinks of her calling him River, just that one word, the way she always said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. And then he says out loud that marriage to Vanessa Siren Somerset would be the greatest mockery of his honor and the biggest joke the Battenberg name has ever been made into. And the way he says it is so definitive and so immediate that it lands less like a conclusion, and more like something he is trying very hard to convince himself of, which is the most telling thing about it. Enjoying this so far? Comment Vanessa below for part 2. Until next time, ciao.